We're only waiting for you now.
I did that the other day.
And Amanda?
Started laughing.
You said BID and who?
Downtown DHIBID has money.
Who?
They just released
HIB?
Downtown Helena Inc. and the Helena Business Improvement District. They just released an email I saw today. It had originally gone out as saying that it was just for nonprofits, but any businesses in the district are welcome
Okay.
to as well. So
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting, July 13, 2022, 4 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
City Attorney Doctor,
Here.
City Manager Burton,
Here.
Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Commissioner Logan,
Here.
Mayor Collins,
Here.
and for the record, Commissioner Dean is excused.
Okay. Are you guys hearing me? Anybody online? Can you hear me loudly, clearly? Can we get a thumbs up or thumbs down?
Just a moment.
Okay, well, we'll continue. I hope this is, in fact, before we even start, I want to express my sincere thanks to, your name gone blank, Troy. Troy, thank you for putting this up. I hope this will help because I know that office stress on this. And so thank you for going the extra mile to make this happen. And then she appears, so.
Can I just say something?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And also, as the person who is most often remote for these meetings, I'm grateful for the efforts made to make sure people can hear when they are participating remotely. I am able to be here this week and next, but I know it really does help when there are microphones. So thank you so much for the efforts you made for the meeting today.
Okay, we'll continue with commission comments and questions. Commissioners, nothing. We'll move along. Department of. Oh.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this the appropriate time to talk about something we'd like to have in the future, or would you like that at the end?
No, you can talk now. This is your
Okay.
time. Commission comments or questions.
Okay, I will be brief. I was hoping that moving forward, we might schedule periodic updates on the Muni's restaurant, its status, how things are going, et cetera, related to budget and budgeting. And if it would be possible to schedule our first one prior to the adoption of the final budget, that would be great. If it is something of interest to the rest of the commission. I know it was raised back, I believe, in January as something people were interested in, but I think given the turnover, it might be useful to confirm that that would be something we would be interested in hearing. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
No prob.
I don't have a problem with that either, Commissioner.
Great. So then, Manager Burton, do we need to discuss what we would like to see in an update? Would that be useful, or is that sufficient to?
Mayor, Commissioner, I think it's sufficient. I'm assuming that what you're talking about is financial update.
I think financial is probably the most important, but any other relevant updates related to operations or other issues that might impact budgeting would be great too.
Yeah, we'll gather with the finance director, Mayor, and the park and rec folks and be able to do that. I'm not looking at a calendar right now as to when that. But I think we've got meetings prior to the adoption of the budget, so I think we can accomplish that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Opera, Department Direction Feedback Needed, Opera Funding Finance Director Danielson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So tonight, we wanted to come back to the commission and just regroup where we have come with our ARPA funding. And just a recap of Thank you. Just a recap of where we're at. So the city was awarded $8.4 million of local recovery funds. And the Public Works Department is also been awarded both a state minimum allocation grant of about $5.2 million and a $2 million competitive state grant. And those are specifically for water projects and for a total ARPA funding that coming to the city of almost $15.7 million, which is it's pretty nice. It's pretty hefty sum of money. So just to recap on the water projects, we had designated $1.8 million of the local recovery funds that the city was going to get toward water projects. And they're taking that along with their state minimum allocation, their state competitive grant, and $4.4 million in state revolving loan funds toward $13.4 million in water projects. And most of that is going to be at the 10-mile water treatment plant. And I do have Public Works Director Ryan Leland here to elaborate on that if you would like more information on that at this time. Yep. Okay, so thank you. So that leaves the city with about $6.687 million left to allocate of local recovery funds. Again, 1.8 was designated by the commission to go to the water funds, leaving 6.687 million for the commission to decide to determine how they want to distribute those funds. There have been conversations at the commission level on how to distribute those funds. However, other than the 1.8 million, there was really nothing ever decided or voted on by the commission to allocate the money. So we wanted to get through the budget, take this opportunity to come back to the commission and make some presentations on our CIP for the city. Also talk about how the money can be spent, and then bring some decision-making back to the commission on how to allocate that ARPA money. On the next slide, for the local recovery distribution, just as a reminder, the US Treasury issued its final rule. And so prior to that final rule, we had some restrictions on how the city of Helena could spend its $8.4 million. With that final rule, the city was able to take that $8.4 million and claim it as just a standard revenue loss distribution, which then gives the city flexibility on how we want to spend the money. We're no longer restricted to just specific water sewer projects or some of the other 4 items that were, spelled out in the interim rule. Now we can have flexibility on how we want to spend that money on local government services. So that also provides, I think a lot of flexibility to other smaller governments. They could have claim up to $10 million. So we were able to claim all of ours as the standard allowance. And we already filed that reporting. So it was pretty nice to be able to be done with that reporting requirement as well. We still believe that the funds need to be committed by December 30th, 2024, or spent by the end of December 31st, 2026. So knowing that, just as a recap of where we're at, we wanted to then kind of move in from that. This is how much money we have, to moving into understanding what certain capital needs the city is facing right now.
Yeah, Mayor,
Please.
just from a big picture in terms of establishing the priorities some months ago, working on the budget or stabilization of budget, and then a review of the CCIP and an allocation of ARPA is where we're at today. This is all draft. And so, and I know talking with Amanda a couple of days ago, I know that you're also putting together a calendar that includes a process for recruiting a replacement commissioner for Commissioner Fever. That's in addition, this is all based on our regular planned meeting schedules. And we're not quite sure we may have to do some work with the clerk's office to see what's a doable schedule for the commission with these calendars being full and then the other activities that you're working on. So this is preliminary. It's for your consideration to digest, and we'll finalize it at a future meeting when you guys are comfortable. So we'd ask you to look at the big picture and consider obligations you have outside of this proposal as well.
Roger that. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Obitz.
Thank you, Director Danielson, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So this slide that we have up currently is that mock-up schedule that Manager Burton was referring to. We've mocked out presentations for review of the capital projects with these departments. The idea is sort of twofold. In a normal year, when we don't have a lot of transition in the manager's office and we're sort of adding directors, and as we have been in the last couple of years dealing with a pandemic, ideally we would be reviewing capital plans around this time in anticipation that we would have a good idea as we go into the fall and winter of where we're going to be for the coming budget for our capital needs. That also gives an opportunity for the commission to bring in any ideas that you have in terms of projects that you might see or want to prioritize. It gives staff the opportunity to examine those ideas and get funding quotes and things like that behind them, so that when we do move forward with our capital conversation, we have more authoritative costs and process behind it, an opportunity for the public to weigh in, et cetera. So in addition to this being an opportunity for us to get a full understanding of the capital needs in advance of the ARPA conversation, this also feeds into our budget for next fiscal year. The idea is that we would move through these 3 meetings with our departments, and then there would be an opportunity for the commission to discuss internal recommendations that the manager would bring forward for allocation of funds. Should the commission choose to move forward with some of those internal allocations, that would have to go to a full commission meeting for a vote. And then the idea would be that then we would have an idea of what our full amount would be for external groups. As you well know, there are lots of external groups that have been putting together proposals, some for many months, in anticipation of the commission potentially creating funding available for external groups. So also in your packet, you would have seen just a very preliminary draft of an application that we would put out to those external groups later in the fall. One of the items that we need to discuss, and we may not resolve this today, but is whether or not you want to set priorities, specific buckets, or criteria related to this funding for those external groups. So that's something to think on for if you have initial thoughts, those are welcome as well, but we can also review that at another time. Any thoughts on that? On
The criteria for the external group?
Yes,
exactly.
excuse me,
Yeah.
thank you, Mayor. We were thinking that perhaps the commission might have some particular criteria or priorities that they want to put in place for external applicants to apply for any residual funding that we might have left after internal allocations of ARPA funds.
I'm sorry, we do have I forgot the name, but we also distribute funding through this group, right? What are the criteria they're using for that?
Excuse me, from
The
Helena Area Community
Community,
Foundation?
yes.
Yes.
What are the criteria that's being used for that?
Amanda, do you know all of the criteria that they placed on that?
I don't right off the top of my head. Initially, when we set up the program, it was highest and best need. And that was sort of determined year to year based on priorities set by their board. So that's always up for discussion as well as we move forward. This was the first year that we created the Helena Area Community Foundation funding opportunity, but right now it's pretty open. So
Go ahead,
Ask a
Commissioner.
question? If I heard correctly, last meeting, the maximum amount of grant funding per organization through HACF is
I think it's about 2.
2,000, so they're quite small.
it's,
Yeah,
I think it's
but I mean,
2 to
they are.
16.
Yeah, I believe it was either 2,000 to 16 or $14,000. I can't recall. There were some match requirements
Yeah.
involved with that as well.
I would agree with the mayor that it would be helpful maybe to see
To
what
see
the criteria
exactly.
is and compare it, because a $2,000 grant versus possibly a larger
50,000.
investment in the same sectors might be useful. So I think if we could get any.
So if you can just
Conditions
email
or
us some of the
criteria.
criteria you use, then we will be able to, tweak it and send it back to you.
And just to provide, sorry, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, to provide some clarification, there were 2 sets of, 2 groups of funding that we provided for Helena Area Community Foundation. There was 400, is it 400,
2,000.
402 that was made available via CARES funding. So it was general fund savings that we received from the first installation of the CARES funding. And then the annual funds, which is roughly 30,000, 28 to 30,000. That was the annual allocation for Helena Area Community Foundation. Those are smaller grants.
Yeah. But if we can just get those, we'll be able to, that will guide, at least that will be able to guide me as to what to do.
It's a good idea, yeah.
Thank you.
And also just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, if I might, if we could also know what conditions or criteria there were for the first round of CARES grants
Right.
and who received them, that would also be helpful.
Yep, that Mayor and Commissioner Reed, in the last commission meeting, Helena Area Community Foundation did provide a report. We can revisit that report in
Okay.
greater detail if you would like, and pull that criteria and the information.
And Commissioner Reed and Mayor and Commissioner Logan, I know that there were some other distributions of CARES Act to other nonprofits. I can't exactly recall the specific criteria for some of those. I know that some proposals were brought to the commission, and the commission went through a tool called Balancing Act, if you recall, to vote on how you wanted to distribute that money, and that is, to the best of my knowledge, how we went forward in distributing that money, the CARES Act savings money to other
Okay.
nonprofits.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes,
Mr.
thanks.
Commissioner,
Please.
I might also just throw this out as an area of interest. I don't know, obviously there were a number of, a big part of our economic sector that was affected by COVID-19, and if there are any needs still outstanding from the perspective of small business, that this might be able to assist, some of the external funding opportunities would be something that might be worth looking into.
Okay.
Absolutely. So we can come back to you with the criteria that HACF uses to distribute their funds and provide more information to the commission for that, to help develop what your criteria and priorities are.
You bet.
So just as a very preliminary conversation, these are some of the items that Manager Burton is proposing that we look at for our internal allocation. The computer aided dispatch and record management system. This is, I believe that Chief Petty had I almost called you interim chief. Chief Petty had a presentation that was scheduled for the joint commission meetings. That meeting was canceled. But I believe it's still on the docket for a presentation for the subsequent joint commission meetings to go into greater detail about that project.
Is that the full amount or that's just the city's portion?
That is the city, sorry, Mr. Mayor, that is the city's portion. So right now, the county has already committed 750,000 of their ARPA dollars towards this project.
Okay.
That Civic Center HVAC system, as you'll recall, there was 350,000 that was put into this year's budget for that project. They also had 350,000 in as a part of a grant from the shuttered venues grant through the state. The ask would be an additional $500,000 to complete that project. It's roughly $1.2 million project in total. Some of an idea that had come from Commissioner Dean was to revamp the Memorial Park skating rink, potentially with a phased approach that would include paving that would allow for summer use or off-season use, as well as potentially adding chillers and or a roof to have extra weeks added to use in the winter. We have with us today interim Parks Director Brad Langsather and Craig Marr to provide a little bit more information related to the costs associated with that. At the time we had this put together for Novus, we didn't have good costs associated with that. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you want
if
to
I
jump
could
in.
jump in for a minute before you do, Brad Mayor. So I just think from a procedural point of view, and of course, the decisions will come later. But if there are projects that you're willing to allocate a portion of these monies for that are within the city, I think it, just from a procedural point of view, it'd be good to have that discussion up front.
Right.
And then you'll know what the remainder is for potential
Distribute.
nonprofit and other investments is really what we're proposing.
Mhm.
I think that it includes specific projects, including commission of the unfunded projects from the prior discussions you had with the 440.
Right.
We can, Mayor and Commissioners, there's also an unknown amount here slated for street maintenance funding. As you know, we had that litigation brought against the city for the street maintenance assessment, and so we are working on finalizing that information. I know that City Attorney Becky Doctor is working on that. We don't have that information finalized right now, but we have slated that as an unknown potential liability to the city at this point that we may request the commission to consider allocating ARPA funds to. Then-
Unknown potential.
Thank you. And then the next slide is just as Manager Burton indicated that, just as a recap of, these are some of the capital requests that the Parks Department had requested that went unfunded. If you recall, we brought a full list to the commission for consideration of funding. However, we only had $1.3 million to allocate this year to parks maintenance funding. And so these were the items that came off the list based on their priorities. And are you okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Struggling with the presentation, it's fine.
Oh, these are the items that went unfunded, just so the commission is aware that we had not only, we'll be having several capital requests capital presentations coming before the commission, but as a reminder also that we still had several capital inquiries or requests that actually went unfunded from this budget season that may be potential items that could benefit from ARPA funding.
Including the Grand Street Road. So that was not included.
Thank you.
Ask that question.
So is that, there's not another page of internal funding requests?
No.
That was it. Okay, so just so I understand which ones are on this slide and which ones didn't make it onto this slide from the previous requests?
So you remember the list that you put together on the
Mhm.
445?
It went from that list, this is the list that
That-
didn't make it.
Didn't make it, okay.
So where is Grand Street?
It was aligned with facilities and not part of the general capital, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Just with the Memorial Park, I mean, there are lots of stuff going on in Memorial Park. Are we getting any assistance from the county on something like that?
Mayor, commissioners, I don't believe so. I think that's part of the reason why there has been for years an ongoing discussion on whether we create a broader park maintenance district that includes the county.
Right, because it's the whole county using this stuff, and so, but only the city resident seem to be paying for all of this.
Yep.
So, yeah, anyway. Okay.
And Mayor, Commissioners, I might make one comment on this, and then I can open it up to Brad Langsother and or Craig Marr to expand on this. When the Kendrick Field, the second half came off the list, they talked about their priorities, and they had decided that if, a turf was not going to be funded, they were going to use a request a carryover from the other 150,000 that was in the fiscal 22 budget to be carried over to go toward replacing the bleachers at Kendrick Field. And I can have Craig Marr or Brad elaborate on any of these or anything we missed on this list if need be.
Mayor, Commissioners, I'll defer to Craig Marr. Yeah, Mayor, Commissioners. Yes, we do. We have a big need at Kendrick Field for the bleacher replacement. So I think we're going to end up needing as much money as we can for that project. We've got a structural engineer that's going to look at the structure to make sure it's stable and try to get the load requirements for the structure. So that'll give us a good step to identify what we can do with the actual bleachers. And then as far as the Memorial Park project, I'll just talk about that just for a minute here, but I guess I'd want to tend to stay away from asphalting that surface. Maybe concrete would be better because the dark asphalt would absorb sunlight and end up melting the ice quicker. And it would be super, super hot in the summertime. Right now we have the Kids program operating out there. And just with that dirt field, it's like super hot and sunny. They can't really use that area that much because it's so exposed. So one of our other proposals is to just put like a roof over that area. And with just a roof, that would help preserve our ice during the ice skating season because it would keep the sun off of it. And that would benefit us in the summertime with the Kids program because they would have a shelter. Like today, for example, when the thunderstorm came rolling in at Memorial, we didn't have enough room for all the kids. So they ended up coming over to our shop to take shelter from the weather, basically. And so if we have that canopy over the ice rink, that would provide shelter for the Kids program. And then other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Some of these numbers have gotten higher than they are on the page here. Like anything you call next week and it's going to cost more. So I have some adjustments on numbers if you're interested down the road here. And if there's any other questions or anybody has any concern or questions about anything on this, just let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Are there any preliminary numbers associated with the skating rink canopy concrete?
Yes, Commissioner. We've got a rough estimate of between 200,000 and 300,000. It's said it because it's such a large area to cover for like a regulation hockey rink. It has to be 200 feet by 85 feet wide. So just to get a structure that large, that's why it's so expensive.
Anyway, that's for another day. Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, one other item that has come up since this was put into notice earlier in the week for the internal funding requests. The county came forward. There was a lightning strike in the building that houses equipment related to the tower on Mount Helena. The proposal right now coming from the county is that they would be interested in using some of their ARPA funds to help replace that structure. It would be essentially a prefabricated building that would replace the existing building. There's significant damage to the roof, and there is IT equipment that is inside of that building that has sustained damage because of the structural issues. Right now, they're estimating about 50,000 to complete that project. So the ask would be 25 from the city. This is very preliminary, just came from Nancy yesterday, so.
Troy, with that, I mean, all of our computers went down, including 10 Mile. It's a pretty significant public safety issue. And I think that there have been preliminary discussions where we could work with the guard to actually fly with a helicopter that building up on the mountain.
All right. I mean, that's not a heavy ask, so. Any other comments? Please continue.
So the last item that we just wanted to bring before you, this is a very, very high level overview, but just something to keep in mind as we start to look forward toward projects that could potentially be funded either through our capital, regular capital fund and or ARPA funds. The infrastructure bill that came through, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which passed in November, it's a $1.2 trillion bill, allocation bill that is. Primarily the priorities are roads, bridges, rail, transit, airports, electric grid, water systems, and broadband. The funding was enacted in March. Right now, our understanding is that majority of the funding that would be available to cities of our size would come through the state through existing grant programs. We're still working to get our arms around this. This is a huge allocation bill. So I will be working, and now in my role as a grant administrator, I'll be working with the league and others to try to tackle to see what exactly we would be eligible for. We have a lot of great projects. There's a lot of money related to community connectivity. We've got Centennial Trail. We have, other projects in the city that could potentially benefit from something like that. So that's just something we want to make sure that you keep in mind, and then we'll continue to keep you updated on as we move forward.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Any guess as to what that would mean to Helena dollar wise?
I wouldn't feign a guess,
Okay.
Commissioner, at this
thought
point.
That I'd try. Thanks.
Mayor, I would just add that it seems like there's opportunity all around us with this bill, and we need to be prepared to take advantage of that.
Good. Go ahead, Commissioner.
This is just a general statement. I'm not sure who to direct it to per se, but if it would be useful, if there was a way as we go through all these requests for ARPA to indicate, as you know more about what might or might not be eligible, projects that could theoretically be eligible, sort of like we did with the budget. We were like, well, maybe this could be an ARPA discussion if we can sort of identify what might be a new bill discussion
Yeah.
to help us with
That would help
prioritization.
prepare, yeah.
That would be useful for me because under those categories, I think I have some ideas of what might fall under the umbrella, but not for sure. So that would be useful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
So at this time, we're opening up for public comments on this topic. Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk? Oh,
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
do we have any online?
This time I see no hands raised and I have no written public comment.
Okay, are you on Zoom?
I'm in my office.
God, geez. I want to know if we are being heard loud and clear.
Yes,
Okay.
crystal clear. In fact, it's
Okay.
almost like Commissioner Reed's in the room.
Almost.
Okay, that's all I wanted to hear. There you go. Okay, if no comments from the public, then we'll move on to our next city manager's report.
So Mayor, I don't have anything to report,
Okay.
but just asking for a little feedback from the governing body. I mean, generally, as we're walking down the road here, we'll get better information in front of you. Are you generally okay to consider in-house projects before we go out to nonprofits and others in terms of the process for allocating ARPA? And then I think that leaves us, whatever that number may be, a clear number, but it's kind of a two-step process. What are our immediate public safety and other needs in the city? And then that leaves 4 or 5 million or whatever that number is.
Distributed
for nonprofit
community, right?
and other organizations.
The way I see it, give us a total from what we have from the in-house project. Let's see where we're at, and then we know what we'll put out to the public, to the nonprofit. Yes.
If I might, I would consider, not having thought it through very well, that maybe we want to establish a minimum amount that we would set aside for nonprofits, because I think it would be easy to spend all of it on internal projects. And I think there are some community needs.
And
So maybe as a commission, if we could agree to a minimum, and maybe we end up with more to set aside for community needs, but if there's some threshold that
Yeah.
we maintain, I think that might be a good idea.
But from what I saw today, those are the internal projects you're talking about?
Yeah,
Or are just,
We're, Mayor, Commissioner, we're recognizing your point. We're trying to just bring forward internal projects that are critically important,
okay,
understanding that you're going to want a remainder to deal with other social issues throughout.
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I guess I'd say, to answer the manager's question, I'm quite supportive of taking care of those internal needs. I think there are many, and these speak to existing commitments that the city has already made and maybe even in the past deferred because of, inability to find the funding for them. So yeah, definitely, but I'm certainly open to ideas of minimums for those outside of the organization.
I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you. That helps us
Yeah.
in preparing for future discussions. And then after this meeting, if you would just contemplate how you see this rolling out and whether or not we need to adjust this schedule with other activities that you're planning on now. And if we need to coordinate with the clerk's office relative to, because some of what you have going on in terms of replacing the commissioner, et cetera, is in addition to what we have normally planned. And so short of overloading you, we might have to adjust this calendar as well. So give that some consideration.
And since the public been thinking that we're making buku dollars here as commission, you better start paying us buku dollars. Because we're spending way too much time here now. This was supposed to be part-time.
That's
So,
right.
anyway, yeah, I hear you, and I think that's the route to go. City attorney update.
Mayor, commissioners, I have nothing to report.
At this time, I'll open up the floor for any comments from the public. I see you sitting there, Mr. O'Neill. Do you have any comments?
No, I'm just glad to be here and listen to your plans for ARPA.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
I guess while I'm here, I would just say one of the infrastructure projects that the city's been working on in conjunction with the Helena Housing Authority is the Cruz Avenue revisioning, and as it relates to being able to add some additional affordable housing. So throw that out there. Some other things.
Thanks. Madam Clerk, do we have any others online?
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I have no hands raised online. I have no written public comment either.
Any final comments from the commission? Go ahead,
Yeah, Mr.
Commissioner.
Mayor, I'll try my best to do this. So relative to external funding requests for ARPA, one of the qualities that I've struggled with, like, toward the end of last year, the previous commission took this matter up, and we were presented what I would consider conceptual proposals that, you know, were good in concept, but there was no, you know, concrete plan to for exactly what outcome was expected, and then a plan to, you know, execute that. And so for me, I had a hard time knowing, for example, as I look over at Director Leland, of course, he may have all the money he needs in terms of the capacity to do projects and, you know, the local the construction capacity to pull those off. But I know there's great need in water and wastewater. And so what I struggled with the external funding proposals were that they were very conceptual. And so as we're considering these, taking application of these, I'd really like to see some pretty concrete plans
Oh, yeah,
that we would be
definitely.
considering putting money toward. So
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and-
I think that's reasonable.
Mayor, commissioners, included in your packet is a draft application, 4-page form, which hopefully tries to get us there. If you see that it's lacking in any area, please let us know, because this is a draft.
Mhm.
But I think it's to try to address your very concern.
thank you. So Mr. Mayor, just maybe a follow-up question to that. So if I understood the beginning of the presentation, there was a sort of a rough deadline of trying to get well down the road by this fall. And so we would have, I guess, these applications in by then from external.
Yeah,
Yes, that's right. Understanding that this is a preliminary calendar
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
you've got other stuff going on. So we're gonna have to do some more work on what the calendar actually looks like. But we're not gonna be pressed up against the deadline for the use of those funds until 2024.
24.
Not that we want to wait until then, but
Right.
we've got time to work
This
through
is
the
good.
details.
Yep, yeah, I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Okay, any final comments from the commission? Well, if nothing else, this meeting's adjourned.
Good.